is one of the most fundamental and important factors that influences your ability to complete a diet. Hi all, this is Michael from CGOD again. Have you hit a plateau? Are you struggling with very long diets? Or do you rebound completely after a diet? Well, today we're going to go over some strategies and some parameters you should take into account when analyzing your diet. So, first of all, what should we look at? Well, we should look at the macro view on the diet, and that is how long and how much weight do I want to lose. And I think that's where a lot of people start. But I think before I start going into more detail, I should say that parameterizing it makes a lot of sense and being strict, and once you make a decision, you should stick to that decision and then iterate on that decision next time. I'll explain what all that means in a second. So first of all, I think you should have a lower marker for, a certain amount of weight you should lose, and a minimum length as well, because it allows to, first of all, psychologically see that the scale has moved, and then also take into account the potential measurement error that you might have when going through a diet, right? Because, you might eat a bit more salt, you might be a little more stressed, and so the effect of those external factors may impact your weight and may show no difference, especially if your diet is really, really short. Let's say you diet for a week. You may lose a lot of weight, but the thing is, at the very beginning of a diet, you also lose a lot of water weight. So how do you know whether you lost fat or you lost water? Because then you may gain it right back. And then also, let's say you only lost like 200 grams of fat. It's like, okay, was it worth a week, or would it have been better to plan out a longer, better structured diet? And now there are certain situations where you may want to use really, really quick diets, but those are such extreme circumstances. I'm talking about general fat loss. The other side of things is too high. So if we try to do too extreme of a diet, well, we could have severe health consequences. If you try to lose too much weight too quickly, it could affect your health even. It could affect your performance. So if you're an athlete, or even if you just are in the gym in general, you want to make sure that when you diet, you don't just shrink, that you actually keep a certain amount of muscle and that you look better at the end of it, especially, or at least you've lost majority fat for somebody who just cares about pure performance, as keeping the muscle is what is important. Then you want, if it's too high, you might also have higher stress levels. So it's quite stressful, it's quite fatiguing, you can get really, really hungry, you can sleep poorly. The amount of energy you use throughout the day drops as well, which means that you may have to drop your calories to such a severe point in order to make sure that you can keep the weight loss, that it's just, let's cap it out at a maximum. And I'll get it in ways of, well, what if I want to lose a lot more weight than these maximums? There are absolutely ways, but how about making it sustainable, right? Then there's obviously also just the pure, fatigue in a psychological realm. Like, it's tiring to always think about this and that and the other, to always be thinking of food. You can get to the end of it where you're just genuinely always thinking of food and you just cannot wait for it to end. You just really want to eat that pizza or whatever it may be. So that's why you have a lower and a higher end. So what are the main factors to consider? So on a macro level, there is length. So how long is the diet? If I do a 1 week diet, it's kind of hopeless. Oh, I'm not really going to lose anything. I'm going to lose so much water weight. There's no point. If I do a 50-week diet, which is almost a year, that's exhausting. I'm going to be hormonally exhausted, stressed, and what are the chances of me being able to keep it up for 50 weeks? Because I also want to go meet my friends at some point. I don't want to, do that for, a year straight. And even if you were willing to it and you had no friends, then still it's extremely stressful on the body. You might get to a point where you're barely able to sleep and your calories are so low that you just feel like you're absolutely starving yourself. So minimum, you want to see some change. So you want to lose at least a kilo or two. There's a parameter that I've heard of, which is 3% of your body. And, that's a pretty good parameter to start. So, for example, in my case, that I'm around 80 kilos, 3% of my body would be 2.4 kilos. That would make a difference, right? If I lose 1 kilo, honestly, I can lose a kilo in a day, I can gain it back. Like, for example, in my case, variation, I remembered I varied 5 kilos within a day. I started the morning at, let's say, I think it was around 63 kilos. I went to the bathroom, it dropped to 60 kilos. I had breakfast and lunch and it went back up to 62. Then I went for a long hike or something, some exercise. I can't remember, it was a long time ago. And I went to the bathroom as well, and it dropped down to like 59, 58 kilos. And then after dinner, went back up to, let's say, 61, 62 kilos. That is huge. It is crazy the amount of variation I had in that day. That is actually why I want to consider another factor. Having it be a certain amount of time means you can use averages. And I think in general, you're better off using weekly averages rather than trying to go day by day, because you can vary so much within a day. You also vary between days. Your salt intake, the amount you eat at dinner, the amount of, how good your sleep was, can all affect your next morning. So you take a weekly average, and that you see how that changes. So that also means you need a certain amount of time, because it can take 2-3 weeks before you really start seeing the effects on that average. Right? So then that means, okay, well, a minimum of 2-3 weeks. Well, yes, but if we use that 2.4 kilo or that 3% number, then maybe we're starting to go, okay, how about 5-6 weeks? So 6 weeks can be used as a general minimum. And on the other end is, well, I don't want to lose too much. Well, you could go on for a very long time, and there are points where you can go up to like 16 weeks or whatever, but I've heard a general good rule is going up to 12 weeks. So going from 6 to 12 weeks and not losing more than, somewhere between 8 to 10% at any one time. So in my case, let's say 10%, because it's an easy number, 80 kilos, not lose more than 8 kilos in any one cut. So that's length. Did a pretty thorough explanation of that. But you're asking me, okay, I want to do that long. Let's say I do it and I lose even 8 kilos, the maximum according to that 10% figure. Then what if I want to lose like 50 kilos? How do you do that? Well, then you go in blocks of 8 kilos at a time, or whatever your weight, your version of it may be. And you're like, okay, well, if I just do, 10 weeks and I do another 10 weeks, that's just 20 weeks. Why not just plan for 20 weeks? Well, no. A good tactic is actually to use a period that is the same length as your cut to just live at maintenance. Still eat well, still be quite strict on what you eat, but just maintain your weight. Learn to live at this weight. Get rid of those cravings, because near the end of a diet, we're all craving stuff. Look, you have no idea. I've had some conversations recently with people who are just desiring a pizza with all of their heart, and sometimes I have the weirdest cravings of like, I don't know, just a really, really nice sandwich. And the day, actually, in my experience, the day, not the last day of a cut, the first day back at maintenance, you just feel like eating everything, right? You feel like eating the world. You feel like having like 5,000 calories, and that could ruin it, right? That's big reason why you rebound. So actually being strict when you get back into it, especially the first few weeks, like the first 2-3 weeks, can be mentally exhausting. I'm actually going through it at the moment. It's friggin' exhausting. But as the days pass, it's like, well, you learn how to manage yourself again. Your hunger goes back to a normal enough level, right? So, in short, the advice is do a cut block followed by a maintenance block of the same length. So, if I do 10 weeks, I then do 10 weeks. Now, to learn how to do this, would probably recommend, trying to do the shortest cut possible and seeing, did that work well? Could I have done more? Did I feel like pretty okay near the end of it? Did I destroy it, or did I just, get through it and drag myself through it? Because if I just drag myself through it, how about we keep it at 6 weeks, let's say, and not move it up to, 7 or 8 weeks, because I want to make sure that I can dominate this cut, right? I want to get out of it and be like, hell yeah. Now, there will be some tiring, but, if you, started to feel like, I'm going to rebound any day now, then you probably should keep it off. Okay, that covers length, that covers how do I do longer cycles as well. But there's also severity. Like how much do I lose in any one week? Like how fast do I lose it? Okay, you said, Michael, don't lose more than 8 kilos, but can I try to lose 8 kilos in 5 weeks? I wouldn't recommend it. That's crazy. That's huge loss. You want to lose, to what I've heard, from somewhere between 0.5 and 1% of your body weight per week. So in my case, and it's surprisingly low, it's 400 grams to 800 grams in a given week. The other option, like I would also tell you to try to lose towards the lower end of that. So in my case, 400 grams for 0.5%, and then slowly learn how to move towards that more aggressive cut. But also, if I'm doing a more aggressive cut, make sure that it's a little shorter because it's more tiring. Okay, so that kind of takes into account the length and the severity of it. There's more nuance and detail, and I think we'll go over it more over time, and there's loads of sources for exact details, and there'll be more. But then we look, okay, on a day-to-day basis, what are the main factors to consider? And I've been through some of them in this channel. There's some videos about them in a lot more detail, but in short, it's calories. So calories is literally the amount of energy I'm taking in. So because a cut is just less calories in than I am burning, so calories in less than calories out, that is a huge important factor. That is the main factor towards making sure that your cut is successful, because if you don't take that into account, to be fair, it doesn't matter whether you're taking it into account. If that balance isn't achieved, you are never ever going to lose weight. It's not possible. So you should make sure that balance is adapted towards hitting the severity you want. So hitting my, let's say I wanted to lose 500 grams a week. Well, okay, if my calories are at the right level, then I will lose 500 grams a week. If I lose a little too less, let's say I'll only lose 200 grams on average, then I may need to reduce my calories, or at least increase the calories that I'm going out by doing, as I've talked about, by increasing my steps, for example, on any given day, or increasing my cardio, or increasing my protein intake potentially. But given that you may have fine-tuned those things already, it's more ideal to increase steps, ideally, and then also cardio exercise, right? Then there's macronutrients to be taken into account. So making sure you eat enough fat is actually one of the really important things, is that can throw your hormones off. It can just make you go crazy. And then obviously enough protein, because you want to make sure that you keep all of the muscle. And then don't neglect carbs either. And I know I'm like, all right, eat all of them. I've been over what some minimums are, so 0.7 grams per kilo. But make sure you have all three, and make sure that the protein intake is a bit higher. 1.6 grams per kilo as a minimum is a generally accepted minimum. The reason being, your muscles, if they should be used, first of all, you should be doing some sort of resistance training, but if they're not being fueled appropriately, the body's like, we don't need these, it's very expensive tissue, I'm going to get rid of it, but I bet you want to keep the muscle. And then, fat, to make sure you don't go crazy and your hormones stay relatively normal, because it's never going to be completely normal. And then carbohydrates are important because they help increase your energy levels. It's external energy that helps just keep your mood better and your workouts better. Then there's other minor factors that are not so minor that you want to take into account. So for example, the timing of your meals. So spreading your meals throughout the day is one tactic. One tactic I've used a lot actually is intermittent fasting, which is just pushing the start of my day back as much as possible, because I can work out pretty clearly, have a pretty clear head in the beginning of the day, and then if I try to eat actually towards 2-3 o'clock and then have all my meals in the evening, I actually have quite a lot of luck with that. I know optimally I may have, 4 to 6 meals a day and I want to start at the very start, but sometimes it is more important to get the psychology of it right. And then also trying to eat carbs around intense exercise because they just give you that little bit of extra boost. In my case, in the fasting times, I would have some coffee or something or some tea to help keep me full. Some sparkling water is famous, or even just regular water, to be honest, but that's a little less useful. That said, I would generally recommend to you try spread your meals evenly throughout the day with more carbs around workouts. But if you just find the meals become too small, this is a tactic I have used, which, explore what works for you. At the end of the day, there may be optimal, but optimal only makes sense if you can do it, right? There's other things like, the quality of the food, which honestly, in my opinion, is one of the most fundamental and important factors that influences your ability to complete a diet. It is actually the food you eat. Because if you try to eat, terrible processed food that just doesn't fill you at all, and this is not terrible processed food, but relatively processed food like pasta just doesn't fill me. At least, for me. So I actually try to eat as much, raw veg, low fat meat. I don't eat too much fruit, but a little bit of fruit is very good for you. But especially just huge quantities of vegetables. I eat a lot of potatoes. I eat a lot of cabbage. I eat broccoli. What else do I eat? I eat a lot of chicken, I'll be honest. I try to eat some white fish when it's available. I rarely, very occasionally have some fatty meats, but that's only if I know I have loads of calories to spare. So just take into account, if you get high volume food, it can be very good. And now, I've heard, different positions on the blandness of your food, and to be honest, how do I put this? I don't go for the blandest food. I like a little bit of taste. Now, you heard the types of foods I'm picking. I'm picking cabbage, I'm picking potatoes, loads of potatoes. I'm picking, eggs. I'm picking low fat, just very filling, loads of dietary fiber and everything. But I do try to make that as tasty as possible because it gives me a little, boost extra. And for me, it really, really helps. I don't think you necessarily need to go for food that you're just chowing down. But honestly, with this very, very high in volume food, you do kind of get to that at some point because it can be very low caloric density. And you know what? That's perfect. Like, I have been ridiculously stuffed on some of my cuts, which are like, that's crazy. And like 1,500 calories, which for me is quite low. That's just nutty that I've been stuffed. And that's because, I pushed my meals towards the end of the day. I tried to, still spread them a little bit, but if I was just really, really struggling, that's what I would do. I would try to have as much filling stuff as possible. Soups are amazing. Chicken, pretty good. A lot of chicken turkey. Stuff that really has things you want and is as filling as possible. You can't do better than that. That's honestly, if you just get better food in that way, you may even be able to forget about the rest of this because you will have such a hard time getting in calories if all you eat is extremely voluminous vegetables and very, very low fat meat or fish. I've lost weight. I've had a hard time hitting my calories on a cut. That's crazy. Then there is to be taken into account micronutrients and hydration, right? So, first of all, water. Just really make sure you drink enough water. Like, come on, be smart. Drink enough water. Make sure that you're never really thirsty because especially when you are eating a little bit less, it can also just help fill you up. And then micronutrients. So, don't just eat chicken or rabbit. I even heard there's such a thing as rabbit disease or something like that, where you just have so much protein in comparison to everything else and no macronutrients where you get sick. So just, have your little piece of fruit, it's tasty too. It's like a little dessert. take your multivitamin if that's the way you want to approach it, but make sure you keep those things in check. You don't want to get to the end of a cut and just be completely depleted in every other way. And getting better micronutrients doesn't really change the ability for weight loss. Like, it does a little bit, but it's just better for your health. So important. We like to look good but also feel good, right? So that's it. Those are the main things to consider for sustainable weight loss. I think that you should really, really take into account, the length. Make sure it's long enough that you see progress, but not so long that you're really killing yourself by the end of it. Just go in stages. Just live at your new weight. Anyway, especially if you're having weight issues where your weight is too high, this is already a lower weight. So just enjoy the achievement. Try to live at this weight, because if you can't live at this weight, you're damn sure not going to be able to live at the lower weight, right? Because you will have to eat less. The lower weight you are, the less you have to eat. First-hand experience, absolutely. Then, make sure you're not trying to lose too much weight too quickly. So if you try to lose too much weight in any given week, it's just exhausting. It'll throw you off and make you gain it all back really, really quickly. So just make sure that you're going at a nice sustainable rate, not for too long, and split it up. Then, take care of your calories. This isn't necessarily meant to be a guide. This is meant to be a general idea. Make sure you eat enough fats, carbs around, especially around intense exercise or even within intense exercise, and get your protein in. We want to look good by the end of this. We're not trying to lose weight just to shrink, right? We're trying to lose weight because we want to look better, or we want to be performant for our sport. Then think about the timing of your meals. So ideally, if you can, spread them throughout the day. If not, push them back a little bit. That's quite a useful tactic in my experience. And try to eat just filling, voluminous foods, healthy foods as well, right? Just the closer they are to the source, the better. That's my general rule. Honestly, you can scratch the rest of it, and if you just eat food that is close to the source, you're probably going to get to a healthy body weight anyway, without even changing anything else. And then just, make sure you drink enough water, and you're getting your vitamins, and you're getting variety of food, and that's the best way to approach it. But at least take a multivitamin. Anyway, thank you very much for listening. Subscribe to become the most performant you, and I'll see you next time.